Okay, it's time for the aviation segment, Clear for Takeoff with Richard Kaplan, who has another big story in the aviation industry. So take it away, Rich.
As many have already heard, Lion Air suffered yet another crash involving a Boeing 737. This time it was their brand new plane, the MAX. The MAX 8 has a system known as MCAS. MCAS stands for Maneuvering Characteristics Authentication System. Basically, to translate, what that means is that it computes each maneuver that the pilot inputs into the system. So say I'm your pilot, I'm captain, Mayor's my co-captain. We're flying an American 737 MAX 8 from Dallas-Fort Worth to Miami. We know that we're going to be ascending. Our angle of ascent usually is set by computer. So when you ascend, usually you do a gentle ascent to fold the landing gear, then you go to a full climb. The MCAS is designed to compute this full climb through telemetry data in the computer. The telemetry data is broken down, and the pilot therefore can input the proper maneuver, say to turn right or to turn left. Unfortunately, on this particular Boeing 737 MAX, the Lion Air one, the MCAS, for whatever reason, was disabled, and the pilots were faced with a very daunting task of fighting the aircraft when it wanted to pitch down. The plane constantly pitched down rather than pitching up, so they kept pulling up, pulling down, pulling up, pulling down, trying to get the plane to gain control enough where they could return to their base of operation and land. They were unable to. 11 minutes of fighting with this MCAS system, the plane plunged at 450 miles an hour into the Indonesian Sea, killing all 179 people on board. This is a very sophisticated aircraft. It's a very advanced version of the 737. It's taken me, and Howie will tell you, I'm very familiar with aircraft, but this one was tricky to figure out because MCAS is a new system. It's the first time I believe they've ever put it on a Boeing jet, and a lot of pilots are terrified of it because of what happened with this Indonesian aircraft. Now, my colleague Mayor flew on a MAX 8, and those who have flown on MAX 8s will tell you that's a very smooth airplane. It's a very elegant airplane. The black box data showed that Lion Air had trouble automatically from the get-go. And when you look at the black box, the first thing you're looking at is you're looking at your data and you're looking at your voice recordings. Those are the two primary recorders on the aircraft. And this is the wreckage. If my videographer can zoom in, that's the engine. The black box illustrated that these pilots were fighting the equivalent of a locomotive coming at you at 90 miles an hour. There was no way that they were going to be able to regain control, Howie, no matter how hard they fought, unfortunately. This MCAS, for whatever reason, computed that the airplane was in a descent rather than an ascent. And as a result, the plane crashed. It's unfortunate, but what it's taught us is that new systems should be developed at a very consistent rate. In other words, don't rush them into production. Not that I'm saying that Boeing did that. However, this is a very big step for Boeing. The MAX is basically their juggernaut kill against Airbus and the A320 family. This was their baby. And it's a good baby. I happen to like the design. I mean, I have one right here. This is the actual aircraft. Fly Dubai flies it. And the MAX 8, if you look, the biggest difference between the traditional 737 and a MAX 737 are these engines. We call them the egg crate because if my videographer can zoom in, you can see there's an egg crate pattern at the end. This is the next generation of General Electric jet engine. And it's one of only a handful of components that makes the MAX truly state-of-the-art. When you compute that with the Scimitar winglets and the MCAS system, this airplane is supposed to be the safest airplane flying. But unfortunately, mistakes are not uncommon in aviation. But what we have learned, and I think this crash especially teaches us, Howie, is that We need to be on top of whatever new technology comes out in aviation, whether it's MCAS or whether it's a Scimitar winglet. We need to be on top of it. Too many people are counting on them getting it right. And when you get it right, it's an amazing accomplishment. I can tell you right now, the Dreamliner is a classic example, the 787. It's the most successful airplane Boeing's produced since the 777. But the 737 MAX has a flaw that needs to be addressed. And the pilots are right. They need to look at this MCAS closely, and they need to determine whether or not it was programmed properly by the Indonesians and by the flight crew. If mistakes were made, they need to be addressed and corrected, because too many lives are at stake. This is a very popular airplane, Howie. A lot of airlines have ordered it. So there is a lot at stake. And you got to get it right the first time. That's all I can say. You have to get it right.
Well, when you lose hundreds of people, it's a tremendous tragedy. But you know, from your outstanding report and from reading in the New York Times, you know, one word I will use is that the pilots, at the end of their life, had an extremely valiant effort, did everything in their power to save the plane, but it just wasn't meant to be. But you have to commend the pilots for making an extreme valiant effort, even though in the end, sadly, it wasn't successful.
Absolutely, Howie. The pilots fought this plane the way Rocky Balboa fought Apollo Creed. I mean, this was a very, very valiant effort. But unfortunately, we've seen this before. In fact, Airbus's prototype A320 during the Paris International Air Show, the computer took over the airplane and crashed it into terrain. It's not unusual that technology becomes too much for one person to bear. But in this particular case, it's not just the technology of the MCAS system, it's the pilots themselves who are put in a position where now they're facing a new technology and they're asking themselves, well, what do we do? We've never flown MCAS before. So there's a lot at stake.
Yeah, Richard, I just want to ask you to give us a clarification on the article. It has a sentence here, and I'd like for you to explain to our audience exactly what this means. It said, almost from the moment it took off, the Boeing 737 nose was repeatedly forced down, apparently by an automatic system receiving incorrect sensor readings. Let's expand on the incorrect sensor readings.
Absolutely, Howie. On the nose of the aircraft, if Rocco can zoom in, it's very hard to make it out. This is a model, so they didn't accurately put everything in there or it would have cost a fortune. But there are three little sensors. There's the pitot tube, and then there is the altitude and attitude tube. The altitude of attitude measures the pitch of the airplane. So when I'm pitching up, on takeoff, you'll hear pilots always go V1. V1 is your max speed for rotation. That's when you pull the nose wheel is at V2. V2, you are fully now committed. You are not aborting this takeoff. This is an actual takeoff. Plane's airborne. The sensors deliver data to the flight computers constantly. What happened here, Howie, is one of the sensors, for whatever reason, malfunctioned and was delivering improper data, causing that nose to go down consistently. And the pilots fought it hard. They fought, I mean, it brings tears to my eyes. I'm trying not to cry because what these pilots face is a nightmare that I can't even begin to imagine. And I fly a lot. But what I've learned from this crash is that new systems are always being tested. And we learn from these crashes. Every crash is a lesson learned. And we will learn from this one. We will learn what went wrong and we'll correct it. And Boeing will fix it fast because this is an airplane that Boeing cannot afford to have sitting on the tarmac.
Okay, great report, Richard, on a very sad story, but as you did a fabulous job. So thank you,
you.
Richard Kaplan.